Hello, listeners. Been wondering how you can help the show? Probably not. But here are 5 things you can do. 1. Subscribe. Support the show by clicking the subscription link in the show notes. 2. Review on iTunes, on our website, www.afraidofnothingpodcast.com, or on whatever app you listen to. 3. Donate. When you go to our website, click the cute coffee cup icon. Or in the show notes, click the subscription link. 4. Share. Sharing really is caring. Tell your friends and even your enemies to check out the show. 5. Watch. Wait a minute, it's a podcast, not a movie. Actually, it's both. Check the show notes to find out where to watch the documentary. You can also rent it on Prime Video. That's it. Oh, one last thing. Enjoy this episode.
In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey. Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing.
All right, we're here with not one, but 2 guests. My good friend Cuyle Carvin joins us back on this episode. Cuyle was on an episode earlier, and then he co-hosted with me with Ruthie Larkin, the Beantown Medium, about a month or so ago. And Cuyle brought one of his friends, Therese Relucio. She was a medium, but she actually stopped practicing a while ago. So we're going to talk about tonight about what it's like to be a medium and what it's like to stop. So, Cuyle, why don't you introduce us to Therese and how you met her?
Hey, Therese, and hey, Bob, and hey, everybody else. I met Therese when I started dating her sister, and this was back, I don't know, it was a long time ago. It's like 11 years ago. Just so happened to realize that she was a practicing medium. I'm not sure, how do you identify or define as a medium or a psychic or a spiritual healer? I'm not sure exactly how you classify yourself. But yeah, we met and we had this, we got along right away, and we had an instant connection with this mediumship, if you will. So why don't we just take that and go into how do you define your abilities? And when did you first realize that you had them?
Absolutely. So happy to be on the show. I'm really excited to start talking about these things, and can definitely provide like sort of a general background, and then we can go into details later of whatever experiences and things like that. So I have been practicing as a professional medium for maybe about 7 to 8 years. I was doing that. That was the only thing I was doing. I was taking private clients, and I did stop. And when I stopped, that was back in 2015. And we can go into a lot of reasons of why I stopped, and some of them will definitely come up here. But yeah, I mean, I do define myself, I call myself a medium. There are, a lot of people who don't necessarily know what the difference between a medium, a psychic, or a spiritual healer is. But essentially, a medium is someone that communicates with the spirit world. And if we had to just put that in layman's terms, it's literally someone who sees ghosts, speaks to ghosts, can communicate in one way or another, whether that's in a verbal way or telecommunication, something like that. So yeah, I would say I'm a medium.
Do you have any family members that also have any shared experiences or abilities?
To be honest, not that I'm aware of. It doesn't mean that's a straight no there. So I come from a very religious family. I did grow up Catholic. I was born in the Philippines. And when I came to America, I was 4 years old and continued with my family. My family continued to raise us Catholic. And in Catholicism, this is not something that's looked on and looked upon as a positive thing, right? I can't remember. I don't have the exact memory, but I do know that when we were in the Philippines, I was taken to, I guess someone you would consider a witch doctor to try to get this out of me, because everyone knew I could see something or feel something. So not that I'm aware of, and I don't necessarily think someone would say anything if they were able to do the same things.
Oh, wow. How old were you when you left the Philippines? Do you remember?
So I was 4.
4.
Yeah.
So you had abilities at an age, I don't know like how memories work. I don't even know if I can remember anything from that age, but do you remember anything specific from back then at all?
Absolutely. So it's very interesting. If you talk to anyone who considers themselves a medium or who has some kind of ability like this, 3 and 4 years old seems to be that magic number. I don't know why that is, but I do have memories from it's interesting how I realized that I was able to do things that other people weren't. At 3 or 4 years old, I remember seeing things out of the window. For example, like a man standing out of the window. And I'm like, why is there a man there? And not only that, we're on the 2nd floor and there's no fire escape. So these were things that when I would point it out to people, they were like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see it. And of course, the conversation got shut down very quickly. So that was kind of how it went for a very long time until later on in my teen years when I again discovered nobody could do this, or not many people could.
You know, since I know a little bit about some of your family, I know there's some superstition. I don't know if it's like necessarily a cultural based things that are going on or if it's just specific to your family or not. But do you think like the superstitions in your family happen to play into their beliefs of, because when you mentioned like it was shut down, like any idea of things that you were experiencing, do you think that maybe some of your family might have other things going on and they just don't want to because you said the Catholicism or that religious aspect? Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I genuinely believe everyone has the ability to be able to do something like this. And I did train so that you can hone in your skills. I trained to do this as well because it's something that I was interested in doing, but I also taught people how to do this. And you know, it's my general belief that if you're open to being able to learn and figure out how to do this and connect this way, you're definitely able to do it. So I don't think anyone in my family would be open to actually doing that. But I do believe that people have had some experiences. I know my father talked about college and people who have, like, for example, died in the dorm rooms there that he's seen in the middle of the night. But that's really not, a centerpiece type of conversation in my family.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of, so you said you also did a little bit of educational of how to do this. So why don't you walk us through like the process that you do for readings and what some of the things you might teach?
Yeah. So I also trained formally, again, just to hone in skills, right? You have this ability and now it's like, how do you take that and just run with it and turn it on and off when you want to and really just turn up the volume or turn down the volume. I've gone to maybe 4 different places, including the Holistics Institute in New York. I've gone many times across to right above London or near London, Stansted. That's the Arthur Findlay College. Really beautiful place, amazing place to learn, and the energy is just great. And when I'm teaching and when I was teaching people, really the main goal is to understand how do you feel? Like, how do you feel? That comes with meditation and really trusting your feelings, your gut, and really knowing who you are. Essentially, the main point is that you cannot tell the difference between your feelings and, if you're feeling a spirit around or if you're feeling someone else's emotions, if you don't know what your feelings actually feel like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I do understand that actually. So going with that, do you know, like going into a reading, being an actor, there's this saying that when you go in for an audition, the casting directors kind of know in the first 10 to 15 seconds, even if it's a 3-minute scene, they kind of know if it's going to be a good or bad audition right after that first 10 or 15 seconds. Do you have that kind of feeling when you're doing readings? Do you know if it's going to be a successful one?
Yeah, maybe I should have been a casting director, but yes, I know exactly what that feels like. Usually it would start, the feeling starts from when they first make an appointment to come and see you, right? It comes from how jittery are they when they're making the appointment? Are they asking a ton of questions? Are the questions they're asking something you feel like you could help them with or should have to help them with? And these are all things that you pick up, not just from, let's say, an email or a phone conversation, but when you meet that person. And I would say 99% of the time, that initial feeling that you've gotten from them is correct and lasts throughout the entire reading. So it's something that you have to learn to deal with, to work with if you're planning on really working with people and giving readings.
So I'm going to jump in here, Kyle. You mentioned you're an actor, and it's true. Not only were you in my documentary, you are an actor. And I was telling Therese before you got on, Kyle, usually I watch like the Travel Channel, and I recognize, since I've been doing the documentary and the podcast, I recognize more and more people that I've interviewed or even know locally that are on that program. So last night I was binge watching Cobra Kai. I'm on season 3, episode 7. It's the scene where Johnny Lawrence, the guy that Ralph Macchio knocked out with that illegal kick, that crane kick in the movie, he shows up and he's looking for a new dojo. And you're the first play. So cue your line. What's your line that you said to him when he came in?
Oh, yeah, my line, how you liking that juice?
Yeah, that's when I saw that. I took a picture, I froze it, and I posted it on Facebook. And I got to tell you, that scene was perfect except for one thing. I so wanted at the end, when you rejected him to rent out the dojo, I wanted a karate fight to break out between, representing Oneonta and Reseda or wherever he's from.
That would have been cool. It was funny because they let us like improv a little bit, but unfortunately none of the improv made it into the show. But there was one of the takes I tried to kiss him at the end. Why? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to anything, but I was like, it's kind of funny. I'll just go for it. But yeah, he probably would have punched me if I did that.
Did you meet Ralph Macchio too?
No, I didn't.
When you were
No,
there?
I didn't.
Okay. No, that's a great show. Is that show better than you thought? Have you been watching it all? Or?
Yeah, I absolutely love that show. Funny enough, I didn't watch it before booking the show, and I wish I had, because I would have loved to talk to everybody more, like as a fan, but I just didn't know anything about the show at that point. So I was kind of bummed I hadn't watched it before that. Yeah, but I love it.
Yeah. Like The Walking Dead, this might be another kind of cult classic that you're in. So
maybe.
All right, but back to you, Therese. I got to ask you. You mentioned you grew up in kind of a strict religious family, but then they took you to a witch doctor when you were young to try to like drive this out of you.
Yeah.
How old were you, and what do you remember from that encounter with the witch doctor? Did you pick up a sense that he was legit, or were you afraid of him, or did you guys have a connection, or what?
So I actually don't even have a memory of this actual witch doctor, but I do have many memories of people telling me how they took me to a witch doctor and the person basically said, "This one has it." Different language, but the translation essentially is "this one has it." Just for more recent memories that I do remember, I grew up in the Bronx when we came to America. So I grew up in the Bronx, and I remember moving into the home where my parents actually still live. I have many stories there, which I enjoy and love. I have a lot of great memories with spirits in that home. Before we even moved in, my parents brought a group of people, essentially exorcists, and they were exorcising the house. And I remember when I walked into my bedroom afterwards, it was filled with basically the incense or smoke to drive out spirits. Apparently, they spent a lot of time in my room, and I do want to tell you, it did not work because my room had so many spirits. It was amazing.
Have you ever gone like ghost hunting, or have you pretty much stayed to like helping people where they come to you for support? Have you ever tried to go out and ghost hunt anywhere?
So I have tried to ghost hunt. So the way that a lot of ghost hunting works, from I guess what you could see in shows, they kind of have a history. They know what's going on in that place. Whenever I have ever tried to ghost hunt, my goal really was to try to figure everything out on my own and then get confirmation on that later. The way I did it was I mixed two of the things that I really love, right? So spirit world, and going on vacation. So I would just pick a random Airbnb. Sometimes it would be haunted, sometimes it wasn't haunted. And I would just at night or even during the day just walk around trying to understand what was going on. And then afterwards would kind of just look it up and read the history about it to see if what I was feeling was correct.
It's funny. I've interviewed several different mediums, not only the one that Kyle and I interviewed, Ruthie Larkin, the Beantown medium, but probably about 2 or 3 other ones. And they kind of all say the same thing. They say they do so many client readings, it's out of their head as soon as it's done because they do so many. Are there any that have stuck with you because they've been so remarkable after the client left that you just kind of remember it and you couldn't quite get rid of it?
To be honest, absolutely not. And it's not to diminish the readings and the people who have come to, get readings from me. The thing is, it does seem like a very distinguishing ability. However, when you are on the other side and you are the medium, the experiences are very similar. The questions you get are very similar. And it just kind of blends in, which is essentially one of the things that led to me stopping doing this on a professional basis, at least.
So in terms of memorable readings, did you have any where the client came back and said like, oh my gosh, I just remembered something. Maybe they didn't remember it at the time, or they couldn't necessarily understand or connect the dots, so to speak. Was there any time that somebody might have come back to you and said, oh, like, you were right, like this is what happened?
Yeah. So really interesting things. So sometimes because of the energy during the actual reading, sometimes people are not able to place it, but also maybe they just don't know, right? So I do mediumship. It's factual reading. So you basically give facts. You don't translate anything, and you don't change anything that the spirit is telling you. And many times after, even during a reading, but after reading, people will text you, or they'll call you back or write you a nice email that basically says, hey, I didn't know what you were talking about, so I asked my sister or I asked my brother, who might have been a little closer to this person. And I described exactly what you said, and they understood exactly, and they were brought to tears. Just even saying that really gives me goosebumps, because those are the people you want to help. That's the kind of reading you want, the one that really has an impact on the person who is there to get something out of it. I've had things like that are really moving, and I've had the ones where people have said, oh yeah, I did find a job. It was exactly where you said it was going to be, and I start very soon, so thank you. So there are those as well.
That's cool. Now, when you're communicating with the other side, I think you mentioned earlier, it doesn't necessarily always with words. How do they speak with you?
Just like in the physical world, right? We have 5 senses. In the paraphysical world, you have 5 paraphysical senses that match up, right? So you can see, hear, touch, taste, smell, and feel. And really, most mediums they specialize in 1 to 3 of those, but mostly not all. My specialization there is really seeing and feeling. Don't have a great sense of smell, so it makes sense that I don't have a great sense of smell in the paraphysical world, but feeling and absolutely seeing is my big one there. And seeing comes in 2 forms when you're a medium. Seeing, you could see in your mind, and seeing can also come in the physical form, where there is someone literally standing in front of you and you can see them with your physical eyes.
Mm-hmm. Anytime that has, have you experienced with like I don't know if negative is a good word to use, but a ghost or a spirit with ill intent?
Oh, yeah. And actually, I'd love to share this particular story because it happened in Kyle's mother's house.
Oh, cool.
So just for the scene, essentially, was that my girlfriend and I were up at Kyle's mom's house. We were visiting them, and it was first night there. First night, we were sleeping on the couch. And that night, all I could see was a man crawling against the wall, trying to get to my girlfriend. And my goal during this entire night was to stop this from happening. So we both wake up the next morning, and we had essentially the same dream from different perspectives, the same feeling. And that was definitely a negative spirit. So Kyle, I'm not sure what happened there in that house, but it was a male spirit, definitely had ill intent, wanted to, almost felt like play tricks with somebody.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it was definitely a negative spirit. And the way to keep that away is just, you don't acknowledge it. You don't need to feed into that energy, because that's what spirits live off of, right? They live off of the energy.
Mm-hmm.
You sure that? I was going to say, you sure that wasn't Kyle who snuck back into the house that night? Was like trying to figure out
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't put it past him.
Well, it's pretty interesting because my mom and my stepdad, they knew that there was spirits in the house. And in fact, before, my mom even was involved growing up, my stepsister, she was terrified of the house, and her room upstairs in that house led to the attic. She would stack stuff in front of the attic door because she would have so many bad experiences of the door opening. And even my stepdad, he knew of a spirit there, which he called Mrs. Stack, or who he believed was Mrs. Stack, who saw somewhat regularly. He said it would always appear as like a blue aura standing at the end of his bed. And even my mom has said that she had seen it at certain times too. That's interesting. I'm going to have to ask her about if she ever experienced like any bad energy or anything. That's cool.
Like I mentioned my parents' house, right? The room that I grew up in is amazing. That's probably the place where there has been a consistent amount of spirit energy flowing. Some of it has been a little creepy, but most of all, it's really, when you think about it, the spirit world is unbelievably beautiful. You experience things on a much higher level. Colors look different. Everything about it is not to knock on Earth, but it's much better. And the amount of spirits I've seen there have been so many, it's like very hard to count.
Tonight's Afraid of Nothing episode is sponsored by Podcorn. Podcorn is a marketplace connecting fearless podcasters to amazing podcast sponsorship opportunities, such as host-read ads, interview segments, topical discussions, and more. I've had first-hand experience with Podcorn helping me find sponsors for my show, which is great because it helps offset production costs and lets me produce more shows for you. Win, win, win. And working with Podcorn is easy. So if you have a podcast and are searching for a sponsor, look no more. Check out Podcorn. With Podcorn, there's no middleman. Podcasters of all sizes can browse and choose opportunities right on the platform online, set their own rates, and collaborate with brands directly without any exclusivities. You never give up any rights to your podcast, and Podcorn is there to support you at every step and ensure you're protected and compensated for the work that you do for brands. The marketplace mission is to give podcasters transparency, creative freedom, and full control of how and when we monetize. With Podcorn, you never have to be afraid of finding a sponsor and getting paid. Click the link in my show notes to sign up to Podcorn and start browsing sponsorship opportunities after the show. I just have to jump in here because I have a question. It's even for the documentary. So one of the guys I interviewed for the documentary mentioned, he said something to the effect of, here on Earth, it's all material. You breathe in like air. But in consciousness, it's like energy. It's a whole different element that you're in. So can you describe that a little bit more, the difference between being here on Earth and how that feels to your body and your being, and then in consciousness and how that feels?
Oh, absolutely. If I end up talking too much here, please do interrupt me. So essentially, that's exactly the description, right? So on Earth, we are all physical beings. We have this physical body. We cannot walk through walls. We can't do any of that stuff. Also, we have these things that filter. We call them eyes, nose, skin. And if you think about it, the way that I can describe it is, when you look at a red flower, for example, the color red, it's very nice. It could be bright, really beautiful, vibrant. But if you're experiencing that on a higher level, you're in a much higher vibration. That red color will have a life of its own. It will move. Your eyes, your physical eyes don't filter out, because your cones and your rods that are in our eyeballs, they don't need to filter that out. You just experience everything about that flower, and it almost speaks to you. I do understand when people think this is a little woo-woo, and I can only hope that everyone can experience it, because the feeling is indescribable. There are absolutely no words to describe what a red flower looks like in the spirit world perspective versus one that you see here. Even the most beautiful flower here will never compare. And everything moves faster. So there's no sound. You don't necessarily have to speak through sound. Everything is through telecommunication. So it's instant. There's no barrier there. The minute you think it, it's there. It's done. It happened. You communicated it, and it's done. So the vibration is very different.
Are you part of that vibration too? It's like, again, another guy, a scientist guy in the documentary. It was really kind of interesting. At the end, I had people share stories, and he had a experience of being at one while he was alive. He didn't have a near-death experience or anything. He just had this weird experience where he kind of became like one with the world. He mentioned his whole life being a canary in a cage, and the cage being opened and being freed, and not just seeing stuff, but being a part of stuff. Is there a feeling of that being part of oneness too that you experience when you're in the spiritual world?
Yes, absolutely. And oneness is such a word that just doesn't have a lot of definition there, right? And the same kind of feeling can be described in so many ways depending on how it's experienced, right? So for example, something like this, I've had the experience of being out of my body many times. And for example, the feeling of someone carrying you and you know you're an adult, but this feeling of someone so much larger and bigger is cradling you. And all of a sudden, you know things are bad sometimes, but none of it matters. And it just feels good to like sort of lean into that hug. If this was a video, there would be a tear in my eye. You would see that. It's unbelievable. I don't know how else to describe it. I think many people can't describe it and put it into words.
Wow. That would freak me out. I don't know about you, Kyle, but it would freak me out leaving my body and not knowing that I could get back in. I think I'd be kind of like rudderless. How did it feel the first time you left your body?
Actually, this is one of the triggers. So when I was in high school or when I was in college, I found out that my psychology teacher from high school, who I was very close to, passed away. And I kept saying, I was just talking out loud and saying, this isn't possible. I don't believe it. And she's got so many more people to teach. So what I did was I actually just wanted to kind of prove it to myself. I wrote an email, sent it, nothing bounced back. It had all of these little details in it. That night, I had an out-of-body experience where I saw her. And I don't know if you remember how Charlie Brown, the adults, used to speak. It was like, wah, wah, wah. And that's how it sounded, right? And until I was able to tune in my ear, I realized that was people speaking. I saw my teacher. I saw her. She looked me in the eye and I said, did you get my letter, my email? And she said, oh yeah. And thank you for mentioning. And she bulleted like everything I wrote in there, every detail. And she said, she's never in a rush. And she said to me, I'm sorry, Therese, I really have to go. I have so many people to visit. And I was astounded. And I woke up face down in the middle of my bed. None of my pillows were around. I couldn't move for a good 5 minutes, but around my face, I apparently had been crying the entire time. So it's not scary.
Wow.
It didn't scare me, at least.
You mentioned like the five senses that we experience, basically our subjective experiences here. And this has come up in the past. I think it came up when we were talking with Ruthie, Bob. No matter what your interest lies in this, the paranormal umbrella, if you will. But it's like I do a lot of reading about like NDAs and people who have these out of body experiences and the experiences that they go on to have are pretty consistent. And even when you mentioned like something much larger than you kind of cradling you, there seems to be like a sense of that goes on, and you're kind of just experiencing this other world, this big, beautiful world where you, they say you kind of understand everything all at once, and you just see things that your physical body can't. But anyway, the point that I wanted to get to was, it sounds like you were kind of alluding to this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's like we're all kind of born with certain abilities. And it's like, from my understanding, it's like as we grow through life, through becoming the worldly knowledge gets dropped on us. And when you mentioned like the filters that we experience in life through, seems they kind of get like thicker, if you will. So the experience and the connection that we have with this ability and this, like we're basically like these eternal bodies that are stuck in this physical realm for a while with these thick filters that weed out too many of the abilities that we might have in that connection. What do you think? Does that sound kind of like not crazy?
No, not crazy at all. Pretty spot on, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe everyone has this ability, and different abilities that you can develop. And Kyle, you know me, I'm in general a pretty rebellious person, kind of do what I want to do when I want to. On a side note, I actually just resigned from my job to go to somewhere else where I just wanted to be happy. That's my motive here. And I think that when people start telling you what is truth, that's okay. But I think the big part comes from being able to question that. You need to be able to say, is that your truth? Is that your opinion? Or is this something that really exists?
Mm-hmm.
And just running with it and really believing it and then not backtracking. There are things that you can tell me all you want that this doesn't exist. I have seen it with my eyes. I have lived it, and it is amazing. And I'm not one to make you have to believe it. I do also feel that when your time is ready to just know this and see this and believe it, it'll happen no matter what. It'll be there for you.
I don't know if it's off topic, but that's, me and Angela, Chip's sister, Or Teresa's sister. Did we already say you were Chips at all?
No, we did. I was. That's good. Say it because I was going to have to like throw in a voiceover at some point.
Okay, yeah. So when I was talking to Angela, Teresa's sister, just the other day, it was like we were talking about like there's a worldly truth and then there's like a universal truth. I think more often than not, we operate under what we believe is this worldly truth, and it doesn't really matter what we think. No matter how much of a fact of it is for us on Earth, no matter how many people agree with what this worldly truth is, it doesn't make it necessarily true in a universal truth, in a universal sense.
Yep, exactly. And it'll become true for you when you're ready for it to be true to you. It's funny you bring up my sister, and she was one of the people that kept telling me to stop talking about it when I was younger. I do believe she was really scared. I would tell her, hey, I saw this ghost or I saw this. And she's like, stop. No, don't. I'm going to turn on all the lights now. And she would go around the house and just flip on the light switches like that was going to change anything. I explain it like gravity. It does not matter if you believe in it or not. Gravity, whether or not you believe in it, will affect you. And that's just the way that it works.
You have such a passion, Therese, for this. It's hard for me to understand that you left your mediumship and you went on to do other things. It's funny. You mentioned earlier that this could sound woo-woo. It doesn't sound woo-woo when you say it because you have this grounded New Yorker or whatever type of persona that's very believable. Other people talk and you roll your eyes a little bit. You can tell you talk with such conviction. I mean, I was just curious. You left your mediumship. What could drive you to do that? Because you seem to have such a passion for helping people and interacting with the spirit world.
It was a tough decision, but once I made it, I had zero regrets at that time. My answer to this always is I didn't want to help people that didn't actually want to be helped. I didn't want to be someone's psychologist. I really enjoyed the part about mediumship where people were open, where people wanted to, really experience what you were saying, not just there to ask you questions about just them, and waiting for you to give them the answer that they're looking for. And I just didn't want to do that. It was very draining, and I felt like it was the right time for me to exit. Who knows what the future holds at this point, but I'm very passionate about it. I love it. And I don't know. It's just not something that I cared to do any more of at that time.
Does your family still hit you up, or does your sister Angela ever say, "Hey, what's going to go on with me and Kyle, or what's going to go in my future as an actress, or anything"? Do they ever on the side go to you since then and say, "What's happening," or do they just assume you've moved on and respect that?
Yeah. So actually, I've never read for anyone any family or any friends. The main reason being, if you are reading for family and friends, it's very easy to get muddled in the knowledge that you already know about them. So you start to project things as opposed to feel things, if that makes sense there. But of course, my sister has always asked me, hey, I had this dream. What does it mean? Tell me what it means. Aren't you supposed to be a psychic?
I'm a medium, not a psychic. Gosh darn it.
Yeah. She knows I just dodged that question now. And I'm just like, okay, call me later. Bye. But yeah, you'll always have people like that. To be honest, no offense to my sister, that's the kind of person I was avoiding when I stopped doing my practice.
Oh my God, it's funny. I'm trying not to laugh out loud. So, Therese, I've also had people tell me that in all earnestness, from paranormal investigators and researchers to psychics, mediums, whomever, I say, like, do ghosts scare you? And I hear more often than not, people scare me a lot more than ghosts. Is that kind of the same thing with you, that people tend to be more scary than ghosts?
Wow, that's actually really interesting. Yes, I'm gonna just side with them on this one as well. People are unpredictable. People, you don't know what's gonna happen with a spirit, because it's so transparent, because you're able to pick up their energy. You already know what's going on with that spirit. Do they want to communicate with you because they haven't communicated with someone in a long time? If they wanted to do anything that was spiteful or let's say play any tricks or jokes, that would have happened already. With people, you never know where that's going to come out from, right? So I'm going to say I do enjoy the spirits in the spirit world. Good and bad, I will say.
Yeah, and is it like a muscle being a medium? Like if you don't do it as much, did you stop your active practice? Have your skills diminished at all? I mean, like, for example, kids, sometimes they'll see things when they're younger and then they're told, no, that's just your imaginary friend, or no, you can't be talking to yourself. Do you find that once you started actively doing your mediumship, did your abilities diminish at all, or do they never really go away?
So they never really go away. They can diminish. But in my case, you hear how I talk about this. This wasn't just something I did professionally. This was something that I incorporated into my life. This is still really what my life is about. I meditate. I have a daily meditation practice in the morning, even at night if, let's say if work doesn't take me out too soon. But meditation is the number one thing. Your dreams, because you have to hit a certain brainwave to get to that mediumship level to speak to spirits, the easiest way to speak to a spirit when you're first starting, through your dreams. So for me, it has not diminished. I continue to use it on a daily basis. Even walking through the park and hiking through the park on weekends, I'm constantly looking around and trying to feel what's going on.
Yeah.
Cool.
I've certainly been curious in the past about exploring, do I have any abilities and how would I achieve even trying to open myself up to it? But is there something on the basic level that you can kind of get started? You mentioned meditation. Is there something like during a meditation session, some sort of mantra, or is there something that you can specifically ask for to open your abilities up?
So yeah, there are a couple of different things. The breathing part is very important, and that's part of meditation, definitely. But you want to focus on the intent to be able to open up your third eye. Intent is number one. And then you want to learn how to let go of your fears, because some people will say they want to do it, but the spirit world will know. Spirits will know. If I show myself to them or if I make myself known, will it scare them? If it is, they're not going to do that. They don't want to scare you. That's not the goal. So intent is number one. Continue to meditate. And when you're meditating, it's okay for your mind to wander. Just bring yourself back. And when I say bring yourself back, I literally mean just remember that you're meditating for a purpose, which is to open up your third eye. And then number two, this is the coin flip trick. I used to teach this all the time. When you cannot decide what you should do and you can't feel what your gut is telling you to do, flip a coin. Whichever way it lands, you'll know and you'll have a feeling, oh, never mind, I don't want to do that. Let's go the other way. Or, yeah, that feels good. Mm-hmm. Essentially, that coin is going to help you figure out where your gut wanted you to go anyway.
You also said maybe you're alluding to at a certain time is why you kind of got out of practice, but you also sound like it's still a very major part of your life. Do you foresee a future where maybe you hop back in, open yourself to another practice or just putting yourself or advertising yourself more?
I've thought about it a lot. At this point, I would always say you never know, but if I were to actively think about it, I don't necessarily believe that's the direction I want to go in. And there's really one main reason for that. And this is going to come off sounding horrible, I don't think the world is ready. The world's not ready for this. I don't want to be in the business of convincing people that it's there, it exists, this is happening. So I don't feel that the world is ready. But when the world is ready, I hope to be able to be here still, or be able to share that with them.
Well, yeah, I don't think that comes off horrible at all, because I actually, anybody, I'm going to use the same term I used earlier. Like, if you're already interested or involved in the umbrella of the paranormal world, it seems to me like you're already like in tune with this other world. There's only so much convincing that you kind of need. And in some ways, the reason that you're even drawn into it is because there's already been some sort of experience that brought you here. So you don't even need to be convinced of something. Maybe there's no, in worldly terms, there's no like scientific explanation. There's no way you can prove, especially when it's personal feelings, there's no way that you can prove anything that you have experienced. So I don't think it comes off at all when you say, like, I don't think the world is ready. I think that's the general consensus. I think a lot of people, for various reasons, are, you hear a lot of people that do have experiences in their life. But as you mentioned earlier, like when you're growing up, if you brought certain things up, your family would shut the conversation down. And I think there are a lot of people in the world that might be experiencing certain things. And you do hear about it and read about it, especially in when I mentioned like the NDA or the near death, the NDE, a lot of the doctors and scientists that have had them or in the medical fields, it took them years, if not decades, to come out with their experience because they were worried about like the blowback in their own industry of what people might say, because it's so against, what they're supposed to actually believe is possibly true. So as long as that's going on, we do live in a world where, I mean, even in the world of aliens, and I know I'm rambling at this point, but even in like the world of aliens, I don't know if you guys saw recently in the past, it was the past 2 or 3 weeks when they interviewed one of the higher ups of, I believe it was like, I could be wrong on the country, but maybe it was Russian or maybe it was Israeli ex-Air Force intel gentleman was speaking out. And he said, we've been in contact with aliens for a long time, but between us all, we have decided the world is just not ready. We can't be introduced to what's really going on in this world. The world just wouldn't have it. So I think there's a lot of that same sentiment there across the board.
I've seen this on TV shows. I've watched a show called The Dead Files. I don't know if you watch any of the paranormal shows, Therese, but I've seen more and more now. It's like, well, you've got a demon, you've got Indian burial grounds, and there's an alien. Do you ever run across the alien aspect? And what are your thoughts about that, Therese? I'm interested.
Yeah, so interesting because I do watch, years ago, I definitely used to be more into like paranormal shows. What I did find, and I think this is just in any kind of profession, when you find yourself to be an expert and you're watching it, you're just like, no, you find yourself screaming at the TV like, that's not how it works. That's not how it goes. But when it comes down to things like aliens, and I think this has to do with also like everything I've experienced, right? Just being out of my body and all these out of body experiences. I 100% believe, 110% believe aliens exist. And I do feel that for, when people say aliens do not exist, it's a very limiting mindset to think that only humans are the somewhat intelligent people on this universe.
Oh yeah, right.
That's definitely not what you experience when you are out of your body. It's exact opposite. It's more open, and this is very limiting. So I do 100% believe in aliens, and I can only imagine they look down on us from wherever they are right now thinking, what are we doing?
It's so funny, though, because whenever I watch like that show, it's happened a couple times. I like that show a lot, The Dead Files. And it's always like, well, you can get a shaman to exorcise this demon, or you can get, someone else to walk the grounds and leave an offering for the Indian burial ground. And for this person, you can get a female medium in to release her. But the aliens, we can't do anything about. It's usually like...
That's great. There's no one for that yet.
There's like... slightly off topic, but not necessarily. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, I think. Like in the US, we have Bigfoot. In Scotland or Ireland, there's like Nessie, Loch Ness Monster. Different cultures seem to have their different creatures, mythical creatures, if you will. I think in the Philippines, one of them is the Manananggal. So explain that one, because I want to hear, like I'm familiar with it, but I got to hear it.
Yes. All right, so I guess my sister, this is her favorite monster from the Philippines. I'm not sure why. So a manananggal, it's a human that you can't tell is a monster until in the middle of the field, in the middle of the night, it stops in the middle of the field and the top half of its body grows a set of wings and lifts off of the bottom half. So essentially there's a pair of legs in the middle of the field. And this manananggal feeds on fetus. So it goes to like the tops of a hut. So the straw huts or, in the villages, and it'll go and it'll find pregnant women and sniff pregnant women out. And it has a very long skinny tongue. So no one will see it. But when the person realizes that they're no longer pregnant, it must have been because a manananggal ate it. Now, I think that's a superstitious way to describe something like a miscarriage, but who am I? I'm not a doctor on this one, just a medium.
And I guess supposedly like the way that one is near you is a little bit different. So it makes like a clicking sound, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there's a ticking, right?
A ticking. And it's like the further away it is, the louder the ticking is. And the closer that it gets, the quieter the ticking is. So it's kind of like the reverse. Is that right? Does that sound right?
That's exactly what I've heard as well. I as much as I believe in everything, I'm not necessarily one for superstitions because they're rooted in so many other things,
Sure.
But I 100% respect it. My mom, and Kyle, you know this, my mom is number one queen of superstitions. Every time she like messages me or tells me about it, I'm like, okay, mom, just got to let them talk.
Yeah.
Kyle, that's your next movie. I mean, you just did Dolls, which is kind of like tame compared to this thing. So I think
it's been a conversation many times. Yeah. And there is one more thing before we move on is like, how do you defeat it? I guess if you find the lower half and you stuff like garlic in the top first of hat. So it can't, basically it can't, the whole vampire and garlic thing. So it can't reconnect to its body. So ultimately it dies.
Yeah, that's what I've heard as well. I've never tried it, but the minute I do, you're the
yeah,
first to
please
call.
do.
That'd be a low budget movie because you don't have to burn it. Like usually you got to burn something, right?
Yeah,
in
just
horror movies. Yeah, burn a house down. You can just put garlic in it, and that'll be it.
We just need a garlic budget. Yeah,
Garlic budget.
Hey, quick question since you guys opened it up. So let's talk about, because I just interviewed before you guys. I interviewed a guy, Daniel Klaas, who bought the Hinsdale house in New York. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's supposed to be one of the most haunted places. And it's one of those places that's on Indian burial grounds. There's a lot of stuff going on in the house, but outside the house, they have everything from UFO sightings and Bigfoot to puckwudgies, like small little type of protectors, I think, for Indian curses. And it's one of those houses that's, Western New York, out in the middle of nowhere. So what are your thoughts on cryptids? Anything about that? I know it's not like anything to do with a medium, but just curious in terms of monsters and ghosts and spirits. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, really interesting that you brought up the Hinsdale house. I have actually heard of it before. So I think that the first thing is you can tell someone's background by how they describe things, right? An Indian burial ground, there's religion attached to it. There's man-made religion attached to it. But spiritualists describe things as spirits. There's no religion attached to it. So monsters to me are something that make kids go bump in the night, and that's okay. I think it's something, it has its purpose. It serves its purpose for whatever reason. But I do want to say I'm not a believer in monsters. I don't believe in monsters. I've never seen one. I've never, ever felt that was something that was my truth, and that's okay. But I know spirits do exist because I have seen that. In houses like this, Indian burial grounds, I think there's two ways to approach it. And the first one is with caution, because you may not be seeing a ghost in places like this. You might be seeing a stain. A stain, which is essentially like the energy was so strong there that it just continues to live, and you could experience that. And it's not a ghost, and it's not a spirit.
So, Kyle, we got to take Therese to a camping trip in Western New York and make her be out there for 3 days. Maybe we'll see a fuckwudgie.
That sounds exciting. I'd love to.
Therese is into, or you were geocaching, or you're still into that at all?
Yes, geocaching. Love geocaching, 100%. Always tell people if you want to see new places, go geocaching. Anything you can do. Download the geocaching app. Look at what's near you, and you'll be brought to so many places that you would have never, ever discovered without it.
I guess for people that might not know what geocaching is, sorry, Bob, I know this is like totally not necessarily on topic, but
I don't know what it is.
Explain what geocaching is, and also if there's any experience of maybe there was like a crossover into anything paranormal.
Yeah, of course. So essentially geocaching it's a worldwide scavenger hunt. How it first started is maybe about 23 years ago. Some people who were very smart and creating the GPS systems wanted to see how accurate these systems were. So they hid a giant item in the woods. They let people out with GPS devices, and they just gave them the coordinates. And they wanted to see, can people find this? So they found it, that evolved, and now we do this here on a normal basis, people who geocache, and we find things based on just coordinates. So I would not necessarily say that there is a huge connection, but I will say there are many geocaches in things like cemeteries, and each geocache has a story attached. And usually those are the ghost stories you like to hear. It's usually hidden near someone's grave that had some kind of history that they want to tell.
There's like apps and there's websites where you can actually hide something yourself. Is that how it works?
Yeah, all the geocaches are placed by people who hide things and also look for things, of course, the geocachers. I think, Kyle, you and I, when your family also, we found some geocaches when we were up there, right?
Yeah. We went and found a couple near or at least one near the train tracks, like in a weird spot near old train tracks. Yeah,
exactly. And exactly what I'm saying, right? You would never find yourself there, but the geocache.
Yeah, you would never go there for any reason. It's like there's nothing there. It's so remote. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. But I would say, that curiosity part is going to be the connection, right? You're curious. What does this geocache look like? That's the kind of stuff that will get you started on either learning how to be a medium or really just connecting with the spirit world. And it sounds really cheesy, but it's very true.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too, because it's like we're all curious in different ways through our lives. It's like I think our curiosity can get taken down a bit. So it's like if you can open up the curious aspect of your mind and just get thinking about one aspect, then generally that will start to open your curiosity about other things. So I think, yeah, it makes sense.
I don't doubt that all three of us will have some kind of really giant experience soon, because this is really what gets things going. The conversations, the energy like this is when we start to have the experiences. So I'm excited to hear what happens to you guys.
Cool.
Okay, guys, this has been awesome. So we're at the end of it. So let's just close with a little word association game, okay? So, Kyle, I'll start. I'll throw out like 5 words, and Therese just want, whatever comes to mind. And then, Kyle, you take a shot, okay?
Sure.
All right.
Cool. So the first one, 2020.
Woo. Lesson for humanity immediately comes to mind. Immediately.
2021.
Oh, we're not done with that lesson, Bob. That lesson is going to continue for probably the next couple of years. But 2021 is when we're all starting to really start questioning things. And I think people are going to start working on their actual skill sets and becoming more than who they are.
The law of abundance.
Big believer. You ask, you get. You don't ask, you don't get.
New York City.
Stressful. Meditation, even on the train, is possible.
Ouija boards.
It's a crutch. It does. I do believe it works, but you should always have an actual medium there to distinguish whether something is happening because there is that actual spirit you think you're talking to, or is there a spirit that's trying to just play a game with you because it is a game.
Reawakening.
I think that's coming for all of us. And if you haven't seen glimpses yet, I think we're all going to start to see the glimpse. And our reawakening is, if we thought 2020 was bad, reawakening is going to be a surprise for everyone.
Demons.
Religion. Bad ghosts, but nothing too negative that can hurt you.
Salem, Massachusetts.
So sad for all the witches that have burned there and that were hunted. I do think, and having been there, the energy is amazing. It's you get a sense of sadness there.
The afterlife.
So beautiful. Like, the words are slipping my mind. There are no human words to describe what awaits everybody. And, I wish everyone could just remember it.
Let's try astral projection.
Could be scary. It's an out-of-body experience. There is a silver cord that supposedly, if it breaks, you lose your body. I'm not a believer in that, but it's really just being able to reach a certain vibration that you are having an out-of-body experience.
And being buried versus cremation.
It's just physical. I think that cremation may be better for the planet. But if people who are alive, those are the ones that are suffering. Because when you die, it's not a scary thing. It's not a painful thing. The people who are going to be in pain are the ones who survived you. And if they need something to basically mourn, then hey, bury the person.
And what do you think happens after we die?
So I 100% believe in a life review. It's cliche, but people say, whoa, I saw my life flash before my eyes. I 100% believe in that, and I do believe what will end up happening when you pass is you're going to experience those moments where you affected and impacted someone, whether good or bad, and it won't stop there. You'll experience what you made them experience, and you'll see how it affected their day. So if you were rude to somebody at Starbucks and that affected their day, and they went home and yelled at their children who ended up feeling bad, you're going to experience all that. So I think we just all need to try to do better. I'm one to speak, and I have my moments, but I think we can only hope to do as best as we can on a daily basis.
Great. And then last question, when someone is seeking help or seeking a medium, what should their expectations be?
I think the first thing is don't put any pressure on the medium to find the person that you're looking for specifically. There are ways to call in spirits, but it's not a guarantee that that's going to be the person that they want to talk to. More than likely, you'll hear from someone that you need to hear from. And that means, like, whatever it is that you're going through, whatever messages you need to get, those are the ones that are going to come through. And keep an open mind, because they may not be coming from a specific person that you thought it was going to come from.
All right, that's cool. So, Therese, thank you so much. It's been fun.
This was great. I really enjoyed it. I think this was something I definitely needed as well. I mentioned earlier very quickly that I just resigned from my job because I was feeling like very burdened. And I feel like this came at the right time, exactly on the right day. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, look, my first time meeting you, but you seem to know your own North Star from at least from this interview and from what I can tell. So I hope you have a great year, and I hope you do dabble into the mediumship every once in a while because you seem to have a great talent for it. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle, too. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was great.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared.
Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit afraidofnothingpodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's afraidofnothingpodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming episode, and the world will know how swell you are.